Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you just happen to be listening to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. And have you ever wondered how much Irish League it is possible to cram into one episode? And today might be the day where we finally test those limits. Because the past week we saw 6 absolutely cracking games across the league, all of them with significant ramifications moving forward. This title race continues to burn hot. We now have a skirmish for those European playoff places in 6th and 7th. Add in some transfers that finally happened, transfers that are rumoured to be happening. We've got some semi-finals for the League Cup on the way. We even had a statement from the board of a club to add into the mix. Means it's going to be one bumper episode of your weekly edition of Kick and Match. Yes, it is absolutely Baltic this week, but don't worry, because I am here with your warming blanket of Irish League chat to help get you through. And if that wasn't enough, I brought in some nostalgia, familiar Irish League podcasting voice. Joining me this week, it is former fly netter. Hello and welcome back. Good tidings, Mark McGuiggan.
Good tidings, Peter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I hope people can hear a clear voice, a somewhat unblocked sinus. I'm just saying, the power of medical technology and lots of water has got your boy back on his feet, back in the podcasting chair, and I've got energy, and I have thoughts, and I have opinions. In fact, there's so much things to get into, Mark. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I usually don't do this, but I'm going to do it this week. Where are we starting? Because there's about 6 different leads to this podcast this week.
Yeah, 6 different games and 6 different leads. It's very good, that, isn't it? Very handy. We'll go in chronological order is what we're going to go in. I'd like to start at CV, Friday night's game, please.
Last time I was on this podcast, we were looking ahead to 2 big games for a very sorry Crusaders. They had to host both Linfield and Larne, and after those 2 games, they come out of it with 0 goals scored, about as many points as that bagged, and North Belfast on the Shore Road is a bit more of a darker place than it was even just 7 days ago. The Linfield game, that'll come and go, but the decisions that were made by the referee on Friday night, where Larne came to town wearing their rather spiffing Glenavon kit, it didn't go down well for many that love to parade the red and black. Mainly Stephen Baxter. He was fuming. 2-0 it ends. Massively thanks to a brilliant performance from Levi Ives. He sets up 2 great goals, even if one of them the set piece. But we have to start with what enraged Stephen Baxter, the Crusaders manager. Were those 2 incidents penalties? The first one comes from Cian Bolger taking out pretty much Lecky as he runs towards the ball from a throw-in. I'm going to be upfront about this. I think that was nailed on and it wasn't given.
I just can't believe what Stephen Gregg hasn't seen. I don't know what he has seen. I don't know what he hasn't seen. But for me, sitting watching at home is a penalty. For everybody in the ground, even I would say the Larne fans, they thought that was a penalty. He's just gone through the back of him. It's so blatant, so very obvious. And I'm not quite sure how Mr. Gregg did miss it, to be quite honest. Bolger's big, strong, strapping lad, and he's showing his physicality. Somebody's going to say that, I know. He's just being physical, and all the game's gone. You can't tackle anybody anymore. You could never tackle anybody like that, in my opinion. You can't go straight through the back of somebody in the box and expect it not to be a penalty. Anywhere else in the pitch, it's a foul. And you've said that line, I'm sure, 100 times, but definite penalty for me.
You use that as an example of anywhere else in the pitch. Something that's I disagree with Stephen Baxter on in his comments after the game was that he thought the free kick that eventually led to Larne's opening goal wasn't a free kick. It was a free kick. Lee Bonus does get bundled over. Now, is it the most outrageous tackle in the world? No, but I would say that's a foul. And if that's a foul, then clearly what happened a couple of minutes earlier should have been in the penalty box. Bolger comes in, he sees Lecky coming from behind him, and he steps in front of him, and he takes him out, in my view, with between his arm and his leg. That's missed. And then later on in that half, it's Ross Clark who is able to have the ball in front of him in the box with his back kind of towards goal. He's going away from goal into the corner, And then he is brought down by Levi Ives. Not as absolutely nailed on. I can see why you think it is a penalty. It feels like Ross Clark comes down a bit easy. But then again, I'm not a professional player. I'm not someone that has to deal with the balance and the speed of that game. I can understand a little nudge, and there is a little tiny nudge that would take you away. Two in a row, and you're losing at that point in the game. You are tearing your hair out. Crusaders are just looking for a little bit of luck, a little bit of something to turn their season around, and they just were getting none of it on Friday evening.
It was one of those games where 2-0 absolutely flattered Lauren. Now, not going to take away from Thompson's goal. I thought Thompson's goal was excellent, really, really well struck. But Crusaders are just crying out for an out and out goal scorer, in my opinion. You know, they have a striker who's even scoring 10 or 15 goals a season. They get at least one. Then again, if the penalty's given, one of those penalties, as Stephen Baxter thinks, it's a different game, completely different ball game. Lauren, we're not at their brilliant best on Friday night, and they haven't been sometimes this season, much to the disarray of Mr. Lynch, of course. But I also, one thing that you do point out there, the Ross Clark penalty shout, yet again, there's pushing the back. Everybody sort of thought that. And then the ball is cleared out, and Stephen Gregg gives a free kick for virtually the same thing on a Larne player. I think the Crews were extremely unlucky not to come away with at least a point in that game based on how they played.
They're a team who they just haven't been able to get their mojo going. You can see even at the twilight of the career that he's currently in, just the pure skill and ability that Paul Heatley has. I mean, he was trying to drag that team almost single-handedly. We've seen some brilliant goals from him this season, and I mean, if it wasn't for just being off target, a great save from Ferguson as well at his near post. I mean, he almost could have got the goals by himself, but he cannot do that consistently. Cannot rely on him to provide that magic week in and week out. And I know this is a team that's suffered badly with injuries. They've had some really awkward suspensions. They're trying to fit this all together. I think at the start of the season, obviously, I backed Crusaders to do very well, and I thought in many ways that it was a team that had a lot of great pieces, and yes, they really needed to play to the absolute top of their abilities to get there, and this probably did feel, at least the nucleus of the squad, this was one real last realistic dice roll, and I think it's clearly over this season that you know they're out of the cup. They're not going to even sniff the league. It's all about now getting form, about getting a run of results together and getting into Europe. That's the aim, and for a team that's still flirting with this part-time full-time model that they have there, you see that there's plenty of key players that will not be here in 3 years, and how much do they start to try and rebuild. And you talk about the goal score thing, it's January and teams are making decisions, and I don't think Crusaders are a team that are just overrun with cash, who is, but do they need to try and steal a march? Because I keep thinking of last year and Fitzpatrick and about how Crusaders were key players for him. They wanted to get him, and in the end they just couldn't get that deal across the line. And then come the summer, he's at a different price range, and everybody else is pushing in, and it's a bidding war they were never going to win. Even if Fitzpatrick did want to go to North Belfast, if you're the Crews, how much do you hit the reset button, or do they just need to keep this team together and just take it one game at a time and try and figure out who they are this season first before they even start thinking about beyond this year?
I think I agree with you in what you're saying. I think this season's already gone. This season's too far gone for the Crews. They're already 21 points behind the Blues at the top of the league. Nobody's saying that they're going to press on and even challenge for third at the minute, because there's three teams so far out in front of everybody else at the moment, also being Larne and Cliftonville, respectively. But I really, really don't know how Stephen Baxter is going to pull this all together. Nixon, for me, was a strange signing. I didn't see it coming. But the one thing that I have said when I've been watching the Crews recently is there's so much experience on one side. There's a lot of youth coming through, but it's that middle ground they're really, really struggling on. How many times have we looked at Jordan Owens and Adam Leckie and Paul Heatley in this league, and we've sort of said and wondered to ourselves how long they've got left in them? You're so right. Like where do you even begin to fix the problems at Crusaders? They have, of course, been ravaged with injuries as well. That's something that they got even more unfortunate news about with Robinson and Weir. in that game on Friday night as well. I think they've been pretty unfortunate with a lot of things, but he definitely does need to have a look and see what he can get in this transfer window for sure to even salvage a bit in the European playoffs. But also the summer's big for them as well, I think.
Massive. And I still think these players are doing really well. Like, I don't think it's any massive disappoint. It's obviously a disappointment, but it's not like it's a complete disaster. Looking at the squad and saying, well, they just didn't make it into the title race. Some of these games have not went their way, and sometimes a 6, even 9 point difference can be a massive swing. But that's why it's a big league season. You know, it's made of little moments that then are multiplied, and you have such bad luck. You mentioned those injuries, and sometimes it's easier to kind of look at some of the future. You mentioned Stuart Nixon coming in. I did get that feeling from some fans where it's like, I know we're not title contenders, but that's an odd thing for us to be bringing a player up from Carrick who's been playing in the PIL recently. His introduction to the team, I don't know what this says about James Teelan. I know he was highly touted coming in at the start of the season, and now he wasn't in the squad there on Friday night. And could we see him away in January, even for a temporary move? I've heard the likes of Carrick, even maybe a return to Newry being mooted there. So the Crews are just going to have to hope that they're getting all their bad luck out of the way, and if they can still get a European place, fantastic. But there is that little thing in the back of my head where I'm imagining that probably they probably need Europe to wash their face in many ways for where they are. I don't know their books, but you can imagine even just to even give it a go in the summer, that might be what they require. But again, it's not going to go. It's not going to happen if results like this go your way, and they'll feel dismayed, because I thought at times the performance was there, but they ran into a Larne team who were able to take their own chances. I think Levi Ives is one of the best players in the league right now. I think he is so direct from that left back position, and the way he was able to spot that run, and of course you have to give it up for the pass to see him running across, but runs the line, brings it back, helps get the goal for Miller, and it was game set match pretty much there. And then Larne keep doing this even when they're perhaps a bit meek, or just sometimes the balls aren't falling for them, and they're not getting multiple chances. They keep getting results.
They've got that mentality that it takes a lot to get. And to be honest, there's teams that, you can have the best players in the league, you can have a top striker, but it's all about those games where you fight and you win a game like that on Friday night, and that's why they're in a title race. I'm not 100% sure whether 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, they maybe had that in them, but after last year, I think that they've shown everybody, of course, by winning the league last year, that they have the ability to, grapple on the games and grab them by the throat and say, we're going up the road with 3 points here, even at such a tight wee ground like Seaview that is totally set up to suit the Crews, and why wouldn't it be, of course? But I just totally envy their ability to just grapple on the games and take 3 points wherever they want, really.
They just have so much quality in almost every position, and you see them being able to bring on Mark Randall, Paul O'Neill on pretty much a nailed on starter for any other team in the league. Dylan Sloan is coming back into the team after his bright start to the season was curtailed by injury. And look who else is coming up the road. Chris Gallagher has now officially signed from the Reds. I've been seeing lots of people tweet out this huge, massive list of players that have signed from Cliftonville, going to Larne since the start of the Kenny Bruce era. You can see where he fits into this team, into that midfield, and he will be a great addition there for them.
I'm very jealous of that signing. I think he's a good player. Like, how many players have left Cliftonville and gone on to Larne and really achieved a lot? Fair play to him, because he has been one of the best players in the league over the past couple of years. He's consistently one of Cliftonville's best players, and I'm sure they're going to miss him so much. But have to say, Larne have got themselves a really, really good player. It's the same sort of thing that Larne were able to do last season, and being able to pry him to come up with Denver and play. It's the exact same thing that's happened again here. One of Cliftonville's top performers has now been, yeah, again up the road to Larne. So I think that Lauren fans are going to have a very, very nice midfield to be watching for the rest of the
It's the
season.
one area of the team where I thought, you know what, if you can bring in someone that's established and has quality in this league, it is an area where someone can fit in and they could do with it. Yes, they have Sloan and they have outside of Miller and of Thompson, who's made that other space of the team his own. I think Chris Gallagher has the ability to drive with the ball. He's able to pass. He's able to tackle. He is pretty much your great all rounder, and he's been a winner with Cliftonville for a couple of seasons now. So I'm sure he'll enjoy his step up to full time football, and it's one of those things where it also adds to your team. Of course, makes your opposition weaker. Going in the other direction alongside a bit of cash, I can see reported is Shea Gordon. He's a player who has talent, he has ability, and he has a bit of potential. How will he fit? Will he be able to go straight into that Cliftonville team? We'll have to see, but it's one of those things where it probably suits Lauren to move a player on like that if it brings in someone who they feel is going to be an upgrade. Just talking about all the players who've moved over, of course, Levi Ives is the main one he did last summer, but Tomas Cosgrove, Paul O'Neill, Aaron Donnelly, Daniel Kearns. Before that, we saw likes of McDade as well go there, as well as Marty Donnelly as well. So I mean, just there's only so many teams at the top of the league where you kind of move about, but that's definitely been one where there's been a lot of synchronicity. They're in sync there, but great win for Larne. They'll take it. They'll keep going on. Let's go to the team that is now going to be without Chris Gallagher. Johnny Addis establishing himself as modern legend for Cliftonville. Games like this, I mean, you could feel it as the minutes ticked on down at Newry. Barry Gray, first game in the Newry hot seat. It's his old team coming into town. Newry haven't won there at the showgrounds in well over a year. Didn't win in the league for all of 2023, and even a draw was going to be a huge result. They're down to 10 men. Johnny Addis is the fox in the box late on after scoring an absolute worldie from far out earlier on in the game to pull it back to 1-1. And if somehow the title is going to have the red and white ribbons of Cliftonville at the end of the season, this will be one of those pivotal games. Getting out of jail is an understatement, I think, Mark.
Oh, 100%. I was in Loughgall, obviously, on Saturday, and we were sort of rubbing our hands at the fact that, Cliftonville dropped a couple of points. Happy days, that gets them off our tails. Then I got into the car, and Johnny Addis stuck one in for the second time of the afternoon. Yeah, he'll be getting a statue built up outside Solitude, I would say. An absolute hero to them, 100%. He is well, well loved up in North Belfast. And I think back to a couple of years ago, you're saying how important that game and that win could be. I remember a certain Chris Casement goal last minute up there for the Blues to, send us on our way to another league title. But it's games like that. I said it about Lauren. It's games like that where you somehow scrape a win that keeps you alive in a title race and keeps you totally believing in what could happen come the last weekend in April. You just never know what those 3 points could mean for them, and it's a massive 3 points. Fair play to them.
Like for Cliftonville, they just have absolutely no slippage here when it comes to the title race. Linfield and Larne just keep on winning, and they have the march on them. They have the gap, and Cliftonville cannot afford that to get any bigger. And going into extra time, it felt like Cliftonville were on the edge, on the cliff edge, and they'd fallen through, and you look over going, they've fallen away. But they've grabbed the branch last minute, and they're hanging on, and they're crawling their way back up. I mean, with all the firepower that Cliftonville has, they're not able to get that goal against Newry. They sit back, and they're able to take on the pressure. Another gut punch for Newry at home when they fought their heart out for well over 90 minutes. 97th minute, Johnny Addis knocks that in, and they just don't make it easy for themselves. But like, it's another one of those examples. If I ever think now of the Newry Showgrounds, like How many times have we seen late or big goals at the far end of that, at the away end, and just with that small wall, fans going boogaloo? That is going to be a huge memory for all those Cliftonville fans, no matter what happens when it comes to away it is.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. In the most respect in Uri, they always do tend to give you a real good game, but you can always end up nicking a goal off them. I don't think it was a game they ever expected to be, pulled into this real tussle. It's a sucker punch for Barry Gray, to be quite honest, but it's real good for those Cliftonville fans. I'm sure they're absolutely buzzing.
Red card for Kieran O'Connor pretty much on the stroke of half time. No complaints, I think, from my neutral perspective. I mean, he goes in, feels like two-footed, I guess, from the view. He goes in with force, regardless of getting the ball. That dangerous, and he leaves. He's an experienced man. He should know, and he just made it difficult for Newry. And you'll think of it as a positive because we've seen so many times that Newry have fallen or have been well beaten by a top six team like that. Unfortunately, they do fall to late goals. 97th minute, as late as you can be, pretty much. But new manager, they're getting in. Connor Mitchell follows Barry Gray. They also added Stephen Ball, who started that game as well. So they're getting reinforcements. They want it in. They're not expected to get results against teams like this. So they were lucky in the end that Ballymena didn't get any more points to increase that lead. But you've got to take the performance rather than the result. Staying with Cliftonville, Ben Wiley, if you're looking at this Gallagher-shaped hole, Jay Gordon's going to be one of the players that might fill that. They bring in Ben Wiley. So, they're adding for this late push as well.
I think they have to. I, for one, didn't really expect Cliftonville to be such a well-oiled machine as such this year. I thought maybe Magilton coming in would take a wee while to get things going, but it's absolutely smashed it out of the park so far. Sure, Cliftonville fans are absolutely delighted with how that's gone for them. But listen, they know they're in a title race now. They're not just accepting that they're maybe the third wheel here between that Larne and Linfield loving from the last couple of seasons.
One man who they might find it tough to replace, and I would be surprised just because we haven't seen something like this happen at this time of the season. But if they were to lose Ronan Hill, as it's been suggested, a whole cavalry of clubs in the English lower leagues are interested, that would be a tough one. I mean, his stats are incredible. A lot of them are in all cups, let's just say. But he scored a whole load of goals. He's really impressive. They did without him for a decent patch at the start of the season. He is as key to them as any player, really.
Been one of the best performers over the past couple of years. I think everybody in the league would love a player like him in their team. Gives his all every week, just leaves everything on the park every week as well, which I think a lot of clubs would be totally jealous of, in my opinion. But listen, if they lose him, it's a massive hole to fill. Losing him and Wilson in the one window, could that be a disaster for Cliftonville? Who knows?
Yeah, and he's a player who, despite whatever article I read, say he was 22. He's not that. It's 25, and maybe that just shows you the change that we have in this league. Usually, you have to be completely baby-faced to even have the opportunity to leave the league. That's happening less and less now. Older players, but we would always maybe cap that at a certain age. So the age that Ronan Hale, it shows that the stats are there. I don't know if any of these teams will come in and will fire in an offer, and a significant offer because the stats are there, and the money on offer for Cliftonville being successful is there. I think it would be a really key transfer if a player like that moved, a player who doesn't have a huge amount of history in those leagues. It's not like he was scoring loads in League Two, came to the Irish League and back over. I mean, it's a punt, as there has been a lot of punts, and a lot of these punts are working that are going from the Irish League. There's a lot of success stories right now. But again, a player at that age, they like to think they can bring them in younger and they'll bed in. It would be a huge... And a club like Derby or Portsmouth, look, we'll just have to see. We haven't seen anything that's real concrete reporting there. But while we're so far into this podcast, and in many other weeks, I think this could have been the lead. Probably is still the lead story here. We talk about how awful it's been for Crusaders recently. I mean, look at the form table for Coleraine, and it's just a load of L's. And even worse, they're now out of the top six. And after starting 2024 with this kind of new year, new me, forget about the past, we're bringing in a new goalkeeper. Everybody remember Jamie McGonigal? Well, he's back. We've got Scott coming in as a wide player, and you know what? We're going to shake off all those poor results, and we're going to come in, and then they get thumped 6-0 by Glentoran. Was almost wrapped up within seconds. I mean, as soon as that first goal went in, and it was from a very, very poor mix-up. Again, you add in all these new players, a few young boys in there as well. Mix-ups like this will probably happen, but I mean, Glentoran took them to the woodshed. 6-0. First hat trick for a Glentoran player in forever. I'm not quite sure if the colour TV was around the last time there, which surprised me, to be honest. So fair play to Fisher for getting the hat trick. But I mean, the story here is Oran Kearney. We talked weeks ago about the pressure he was under and the frustration that there has been from the Coleraine fans, but a team who's usually up and down and then it flattens out as a middle table club. I mean, this is as bad as it's been for Coleraine in literal years.
It's a tough watch. I'm sure there's plenty up at the Coleraine Showgrounds are sort of wondering where does it end. That's one thing that I can't see at the minute. You know, it's been a set top six for so long, and there's been very few people probably again at the start of the season would have had anybody else within that top six. You know, Coleraine were always included in it, so there was no question about it. But I mean, one win in the last 12 games is never good for anybody. Their one win has, of course, been against newly promoted Loughgall at home, which I would suggest that every team in the league would want to be winning, never mind just the top six. I wonder what's going through the minds of Korean fans at the minute. I don't know. I just don't know how they're continuing to watch it. It's a really, really tough one for them at the minute.
What people would have said was that it's about getting a few results together, getting fit, and going for this European playoff run. There's no guarantee they're even going to be in the European playoff. They are literally dropping that fast, and they've got some extra players that they're trying to blood into that team, and that's what they'll aim to do. And there's so many questions about what this takeover, if it will be confirmed or it is going to happen. And it was touted that it had 100% went through in the summer. You know what that will mean for the future of the club. Is there big changes there? And to a certain extent, like the board have come out and said they're backing Orton. That's what they've said. And in fact, they went as far, and I talked about it that week, that they pretty much called out, and other people connected to the club that aren't at board level called out some of the personal and vitriolic comments that have been made about the manager. It's got personal, and you know what? Your club is personal to you, absolutely. But in turn, it's how you express that frustration. And talking to people around the club, they've said to me, it's some people, let's be clear, only some people have absolutely crossed the line, and it's a side who you would say need to take one step backwards to take two steps forward. I think it's clear they've already taken that step backwards, and you've maybe got one or two more before they can push themselves forward. This is a longer project that could eventually speed itself up and get forward, but between now and the end of the season, it's trying to stick around that area because, I mean, eighth is a real reality, you know, where they're not even in seventh. Oran Kearney's coming out and saying that pretty much like some of the players he saw might never play for Coleraine again. You know, he is that angry, he's that frustrated, and it just didn't go well. It didn't go well from minute one when there was that confusion for the goal where, you know, between the defender and Roy Brown, the ball goes past, and then Glentoran just kept on going. And it's like I've talked about Glentoran over and over and over again. They're just a confidence team. Every time they get their chest out, they're feeling good about themselves. They are electric. How can they get that belief and feeling within them week in and week out? Because we don't see it, do we? Like, we should say amazing. David Fisher looked like excellent on the ball, his finishing, everything. How many times we've seen a result like this? You put it in the book, put it in the drawer, and then you're looking at 90 minutes the next Saturday and thinking, where did that team go that was so good last week?
Yeah, well, I have to say, hats off to Fisher. I think his second goal was absolutely phenomenal. 100% one of the best goals we've seen in the league this season. Might fly under the radar because those goalkeeping calamities might be what's remembered in that game, but I think it was one of the best goals I've seen this season. Brilliant feet, and an absolutely phenomenal finish. I have to say his penalty was very good as well to grab that hat trick. The Glens have had a lot of big results this season. They've had a few good performances in and amongst that, and I think Glentoran fans are sort of bemused to the fact that we can go out and we can beat Linfield 4-0. We can go out and we can beat Coleraine 6-0. There's 10 goals in 2 games and everything's rosy. And then there's games just where they just don't look interested, they don't turn up. I believe the Anna game and the cup was a bit of a slog for them as well. I think that, you hear all this sort of repetitive nonsense from managers. Oh, we only take it one game at a time. You've got to hold on to those performances and remember, hold on, we are actually quite good when we all click.
Of course, with all the hubbub around Coleraine, we can't ignore the hubbub that surrounded Glentoran, and it seemed to be a lot was online rather than any official reports, where to the point where I'm hearing people talk about these rumours around Glentoran, and I'm thinking, what, not to be ignorant about it, but genuinely, like, you can't just believe everything you see on Twitter, and sometimes the things you see on Twitter, quote unquote, everybody isn't seeing, and it comes to the point where Ali Poor is in town. He was in town on Saturday, and he even made a statement online. You can go on to their social media pages, their YouTube channel, where he wanted to come out and dismay any rumours that suggested that there were behind the scenes issues at Glentoran, particularly relating to finances. And I know Glentoran have been there and got the t-shirt of financial issues, but I was torn on them coming out and making a statement. If I was a fan, I guess as a fan you want answers, but then I guess they're coming out and saying nothing to see here, because I'm sure other people would be saying, if there's nothing to see here, why aren't the club coming out and saying it? Isn't it? It's torn of how you react to unofficial reports, isn't it?
As we know, it's very, very easy to you can just create a rumor these days on Twitter, and if it looks like you follow 2 or 3 pages that are real, I actually can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to wash my mouth out here. I agree with what the Glens have done here. The Glens, they've come out and just basically quashed any sort of silly rumor or nonsense that's going around. It's one of those things you hear when you hear it over WhatsApp. You automatically there's 80% chance that that's probably not true. WhatsApp or Twitter's never really the best source to get your news from. So it's a really, really strange one. As you say, when someone has to come out and say, my money's fine, everything's okay. And it's one of those ones that, if somebody does come out and say something, they get portrayed one way. If they don't say anything, it's portrayed another. For example, at the complete mess, this is going on at Reading at the minute. That's a terrible thing that's going on with an ownership of a club. Fans want answers, and when fans don't get answers, it gets very, very dirty, and it gets very, very dirty very, very quickly. So I think the Glens have probably done the right thing and totally dispelling this. When you have your majority shareholder coming out and saying that it's all good in the hood sort of thing, and you have a captain coming out as well. Mark McGuiggan very jokey about it as well. Cancels a lot of issues that I'm sure Glentoran fans had, and a few worries have been put to bed, and all is good in East Belfast.
Well, as a part of that address, I guess you would call it, from Mr. Purr, he talked about all these exciting things that hopefully will be coming this month. One of them might already be the addition of Charlie Lindsay, a player who was among their youth ranks for a while. It's amazing to talk about these players and they're like, oh, they're with the team in 2019. You're like, wow, that is a couple of years ago now, actually, when you really think about it. He's been with Rangers and Derby, and he's coming back for a loan. We will come to Linfield next, but furthermore, there's talks of a player who could be signing for one of those Belfast sides, is a man I've talked a lot about on this programme, Benji McGee. And I suggest the idea of Crusaders going in, getting in ahead of the summer market, and maybe if it means you're paying a wee bit over the odds or just avoiding the chance that the value goes up. I think it's unsurprising, the idea that a player from a regional side like Loughgall is being touted, when he scored so many goals and he's at the age he is, being touted to go to a full-time side like Linfield or Glentoran. Just to talk about him here now, I think he would be an incredible addition for either one of those sides. And I was thinking about this, about like what the value might be, and of course getting into why would Lockall sell now, etc., 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 whatever. And I was thinking about comparing him because I think he's a striker, and I was comparing him to Lee Bonus because Lee Bonus is now, for all intents and purposes, he is like the dotted line, isn't he? He is what we hold up. He is the 100 grand player that was signed from the bottom of the league pretty much to a team who became champions. And I know Shane McCartan went for that sum or around that sum as well, but let's use him as the barometer, which many people do. And I thought, does Benji McGee come close to him in valuation? I don't think he does because of the size of a club in Lockall and the fact that I think Portadown had Lee Bonus down for like, I don't know, a 3,000 year contract, whatever it was, multi-year contract kind of thing. But and I forget what year Lee Bonus was when he left Portadown. But as a prospect and as his ability now at 21, he might not end up being this as a player. I think he might be a better prospect than what Lee Bonus was.
I think one thing that either of these clubs can look at and sort of think about what could happen is the fact that at the age of 21, he comes along, scores a lot of goals for you, helps you along to the league title or a cup or, a half decent European run to get you a few more pennies in your piggy bank sort of thing. What's stopping him from then being moved over to the likes of Scotland, the likes of England? Their money could be made back within 2 years, and even more so, on top of that, depending on how well they do in a European competition or how well, um, how successful he is at the club. But you can't put a price on goals that can win you games, and a player like of his ability, I think either the Blues or the Glens would probably be mad not to go for him because you then end up in that territory where Irish League clubs can often end up scrambling at the end of a window trying to scrape someone from the eighth division in England who's had 2 goals in their last 10 years, sort of thing. Unfortunately, Linfield tend to sign that player. I agree with you that he's definitely a better prospect than Bonus. I think Bonus. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I totally think that he's a great player and he's one of the best in the league. But I think that at the age and the ability and even his body shape and style and confidence, he just looks like a footballer. Do you know what I mean? He just looks like he is just built for it.
I think in this league I've seen a couple of players who are real difference makers, and I would lump in players like McMenamin eventually in the later end of his Irish League career in particular. Heatley throughout his career was just an absolute difference maker. Gormley always has been at that top end of the pitch, and I think he's shown in a side like Lockall coming up from the championship, and he didn't show. And perhaps this will all fall flat in their face, and I don't wish this upon him, but maybe this was all just a one season affair. But look at it in that game against Linfield, he is able to drag a goal out of his side against Linfield and makes it a tiny bit nervy for the Blues up there. And he's got dribbling ability, he's got that speed, he's got that kind of really determined direct running that Lee Bonus also had. And Lee Bonus I think also signed in January, so it's another one of those things getting to the squad. We all saw the Andy Ryan thing. I'm not saying if he goes into one of these teams now he's going to be their absolute number one player, but I think he'll have a long career, and a bit like Bonus, you're grabbing them for the future before anybody else does. As on top of that potential ability to, you get him into a full-time setup, and I think we saw the Lee Bonus full-time setup. We saw the improvement. We saw them maturing, them sharpening off some of those rough edges, and would be a brilliant player for either one of those teams. Talking about that game, Lockall, Linfield. I mean, still looking at that Linfield side of yours, Mark, you're still relying on a lot of players who were just about sniffing the bench in August.
Still top of the league, aren't they? Still top. It's going well. It's going well.
Absolutely. But like, you've still got Reece Annette, and I know he scored goals. You've still got Josh Archer as well. As a Blues man, do you feel as though you're getting away with it, or is this the start of long term careers for these players? Or have they got a place in this team that have to be knocked out of their hands?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I think that the two names that you've mentioned, both Annette and Annette. We're not 100% sure yet. We're not sure.
Yes, because it is 100% McBrien. Like,
Yeah.
let's get this straight. It always has been
Yep.
McBrien. I know it looks like McBrien. It's definitely
hmm
McBrien. Annette or Annette has not been
No,
confirmed to me, and it annoys me as
Reese,
well.
what's your name? We'll just call him Reese.
What's your
Reese
name?
and Josh.
Rice. Rice. What's
Yeah,
your
we'll
name?
find out.
Rias. What's your name?
Um, and Josh Archer, I suppose. I don't know how we're gonna say it. No, definitely Archer.
Oh, it's like Beaver or Share.
Archer, like Belvoir.
Or Share like
Um,
like like
yes, is
Belvoir.
right. My sat nav often does that. The Boucher Road and the like. Anyway, back to football. The two of them have come in at a really, really hard time for the club. Injury wise, we lose out on Chris McKee, we lose out on Chris Shields. Stevie Fallon goes on his unfortunate 20 game injury spell across the season. One of the best players that we have when he's fit, but we just can't seem to keep him fit, unfortunately. And the two of them have really stepped up to the mark, to be honest. One game in particular that I remember was the Coleraine game, just before Christmas. We looked really, really, light on the ground to say the least. The young guys came through, and yes, it's a poor Coleraine side. I don't really care what anybody says, though, because those young guys really showed David Healy that they have ability and that they have the guts and determination to plow on and get a win. It just comes to the stage where you have to look at it that maybe Alec isn't going to take the position of Chris McKee. I think Chris McKee's definitely our best finisher again when he's fit. I think that we're now, we're coming, surely have to be coming to the end of the lifespan of Jamie Mulgrew as a midfielder. Almost 20 years we've had him at the club ever since I've been a wee boy, going to the games. He's been there. And I just don't know who you replace him with. For me, Archer is sort of the prime replacement for him. He's learning from these really, really good players, these brilliant midfielders that we have at the club at the minute. And he's just gonna have to developed very, very quickly, and he has done really, really well for us. I think last season's loan helped him become a lot of a stronger player.
Are both those players teenagers?
Archer is 20, and Alec is 19, so might not be a teenager, but definitely still plenty of years left in him.
And they've added in another young player from the Swifts, not Linfield Swifts, Dungannon Swifts, we talked about last week, Ethan McGee, slotting in the midfield. I know he's a player that's been all over the place positionally. That could be interesting if that's where he eventually ends up, or at least he's been penciled in to be playing in all those people that were trying to go, how do you fit Finlayson and McGee into that team? The answer is you play McGee somewhere else potentially. So maybe they've seen something that other people haven't. I know McGee has been touted as playing in midfield for Dungannon as well, but it's another of one of these signings which I think every fan wants. Get them young, get the better players from in the bottom of the league and let them grow. And you're totally right about Jamie Mulgrew. To the eye, you'll see that he doesn't have that same zip, that same agility that he may have had previously. And I know he was not a player known for his not 100 speed, but there is a tiny bit of slowdown. But I mean, he is totally a player that has lost a yard in the legs, but gained one in his head, because he when Linfield even tried to wean their way off him, he's coming into games late and he's dictating play and he's finding passes from deep. That is like, he's a safety blanket for that team of yours, Mark. And you're unfortunately eventually, and it might not be this summer or next, but you'll be kind of dragging, kicking and screaming, waving at this little blanket when he eventually hangs up the boots.
I'd say he's probably old enough to be sort of an electric blanket for the Blues. He's just been an absolute hero for us. Like, and as you say, we've tried to let him go, but he just kept coming back and just kept getting better. And I know we joke about, he's maybe lost a yard of pace. I'm not quite sure that Jamie had a yard of pace to lose. He was never a speed merchant, but it was definitely all in his head. He was 100, always has been 100% one of the best players tactically that I've ever had the pleasure of watching at the Blues. And even the likes of signing McGee, players like that, if they want to play for Linfield, they have to excel on the positions that they've been brought on in. If you're told to play centre forward, you have to excel at that role, or else you're gonna be slabbered at by this 80-year-old man in the front row and that hasn't kicked the ball since 1982, sort of thing. You have to sort of get used to that at Windsor Park. Unfortunately, the South Stand's a very unforgiving place to ply your trade as a young midfielder, I would say. You said this 5 years ago, you're like, who do we ever replace him with? We've got this young sort of core of the team that's coming through, and if we can hold on to those players and they can stay fit, then we're going to just have to live without him.
There's not any real core examples that they remind me of these players, but what Linfield, what any team will want to do is to almost repeat that era of the real, whatever, triple double era or whatever it was, where you want the Garrett, Galt, Mulgrew all coming up at the same time, around those players. You want that generation to somewhat come together and to do it, like if Annett and Archer and McGee and all come in and they're core starters next season, they will have just blended into the team so seamlessly, especially if success continues. Let's talk about it, Mark. Look, I've had Mark Strange on this podcast a couple of times this season. I've had you on as well. Here we are now in mid-January. I've talked about how, we talked about Cliftonville getting out of jail. I think Linfield have somewhat in recent times over the past month. You'll want all your big players back. What's the confidence level like at Windsor Park? Are you fearful of Larne? Are you bullish about your ability to get through all these tough games? How confident are Linfield right now leading the pack?
I think we've actually come through probably one of the toughest spells that we've had this season. When you look at it, Coleraine at home, despite the woes that they're having, was never going to be an easy game. Won that terrible game, but got a win. Boxing Day, a win. Larne away, grabbing a draw is like a victory for us. So we got out of jail there, despite maybe not playing the very best that we have. Away at Crusaders on maybe the 2nd of January, I think that was. Again, difficult game, and came through it. And Block Galway was really the final weapon in the artillery that Niffle had handed us in the fixture list. But came out of that not unscathed by any means. Loughgall were absolutely phenomenal against us. I thought on Saturday played really, really well. Gave us a real tough game. Confidence wise, we have to sort of, you have to keep your feet in the ground in this league. 4 points isn't a gap that wins you any league at the minute with so many games to go. There's another 13 games to go. We continue winning all our games, we win this league, and that's basically the bottom line. We can't let the foot off the gas, because if we make one slip up, I'm sure that there'll be either a team in red from North Belfast or up the coast slightly further, who will be right hot on our heels, ready to pounce on that chance. And we've got to play them 2 or 3 times as well. Between Larne and Cliftonville, and so we can't take the foot off the gas.
Let's go to Taylor's Avenue, and we see a title race still there. We see a race at the bottom, and now we've got a third one to look forward to. It's the race for 6th. And there's a new team sitting there proudly. I thought they were going to be scrapping out at the bottom. Nah. They're looking at potentially flying to, I don't know, Latvia or Lithuania or even Malta next year if things go well. Steve McDonnell is the second team from Mid-Ulster to win at Taylor's Avenue in the space of just over a week. Thrilling game, really exciting match, I thought. Chances both either way, but I thought Glenavon were well worthy of their victory. 2-0. And you know what? Some of these new boys they brought in from the League of Ireland are a wee bit good. One of them for me is Duna. He has got a wand of a right foot, and he used it expertly when he set up Snoddy for the first goal.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. From Duna, again, where do they find these players? I don't watch the League of Ireland, but I'll hold my hands up to that. I don't have enough time to watch another league of football. I feel like if I watched any more football, I wouldn't leave the house. Just really quality. That's what I thought. I know you were there and you saw it for 90 minutes, but from the highlights, it just looked like he didn't even have to think about playing that ball in. Now Snoddy's got a bit lucky with a header. I think he's tried to flick it on for somebody else to hit in, but goal's a goal. I'm sure he wasn't complaining.
Well, they were pinging it in just beforehand, and Glendinning was having to dive and outstretch to swipe the ball away. And it's funny, as soon as I saw that, I looked at the teams that he's played for, and I messaged one of the fans of that team, one of those teams, and I was like, James Duna, what is going on here? He was playing with you guys, and they kind of said that unfortunately he's had a bit of injury problems. So I mean, if they can keep him fit, I genuinely think he is going to be a real key danger man in the league and a massive asset for Glenavon moving forward. Dan Clark added a bit more zip up top for them. Then Gavin Hodges came on, and I mean, he is just a real out and out striker. I mean, just chased after the ball, doesn't have a huge amount of height, but he is almost like that small Perkis style striker who happily sits on the line, shoulder to shoulder with the defender, and is happy to take those one-on-one battles and will chase it down every day. I mean, Carrick usually bounce back. This is what we've seen this season. They have a poor result and they bounce back, and they just didn't do that. You know, I could see in that game how Perkis can drag that team out of anything, and they've got a couple of players in there that can try and create something between Maculitis and others, but I thought they just sat back a bit too much, weren't up for second balls. I mean, when they were hassling Glenavon early, they were getting a lot of success, but then they just weren't able to keep that up consistently. And, I don't want to be too harsh or call out individuals, but I do think for Joe Crow, that red card near the end of the game, I no doubt, I hope he looked back on that and regrets that. I know there was a lot of frustration, but I think it was dangerous to enact any type of physical activity with a player when you've got that wall down at Taylor's Avenue. And I just think it's one of those safety things where I was disappointed to see that, unfortunately, and I'm sure anybody that plays the game will be. But overall, Carrick have great individual players. They're just not knitting it all together, and they're not knitting it all together consistently. It's a massive problem.
I think Carrick have, they've huffed and puffed, and they've pulled results maybe from positions that they maybe shouldn't have this season a few times, but it's just been a difficult run for them, to be quite honest. Losing the Irish Cup, I'm sure that's an absolute sickener for them, especially in the manner that it was last week against Portadown. Penalties is never an easy way to lose a football match, but it's just been really, really awkward for them this season. I think they're this sort of perennial team that are floating about mid-table. They're never ever pushing for that seventh place. They're never ever challenging the top six. I mean, they'll nick points off them, no problem at all. They'll take 3 points from a Linfield or a Glentoran whenever they can. For the last few years, it's never been a case of, my goodness, Carrick could go down here. I think, unfortunately, for Carrick fans, it's just going to be another one of those seasons where they're just that eighth, ninth, 10th place team.
But now that they're out of the cup, the league is the only thing they've got to concentrate on, and we've seen them being able to get the results. They have players that can get goals and influence games, and they've just got the league to concentrate on. And now with Coleraine falling away and other teams recovering, like, it's such a great recovery for Glenavon over the past couple of months with McDonald at the helm and bringing in new players. 6th and 7th gets you into that playoff series, and it goes all the way down to Carrick in 9th, where that loss is a big flip for them now, where they're now in 9th, which is where Glenavon was sitting, but they're still only 2 points off Glenavon and Coleraine. Coleraine are in 7th, and Loughgall, if they get a run, as we've seen they can do, they're only a point behind both of them. So a lot of extra emphasis are now going to be on all of those games for all those teams as they all match each other. And you know what? There's a chance Dungannon could weasel their way into that pack, as they're only 3 points behind Carrick Rangers themselves, thanks in part to a tasty little win away at the Ballymena Showgrounds. Plenty of goals. They've got lots of new additions there. Roddy McAree's side has really kicked on in recent times, and 3 wins out of 5. It creates daylight between them and Ballymena in particular, where they can now look ahead to maybe being in the hunt for a European playoff spot, and it hopefully can, their point of view, hopefully it means that they don't have to worry about this relegation playoff malarkey.
Yeah, if you'd have told any Dungannon fan at the start of the season that you were going to be sort of playing for 7th place as opposed to messing about in that sort of relegation scrap that they got themselves embroiled in last season, I'm sure they'd have took more than your arm off for that. But I have to say, on Ballymena's side of things, I think Jim Irvin will have them there every night this week defending set pieces. Every goal was just from a set play for Dungannon, and I have to say, fair play to Rodney McAree. That must be drummed into them. Alves puts the ball into the box, and just every time they're just up like a salmon. The ball falls to somebody in the box and they get a goal out of it. But fair play to Roddy Marguerite. He has turned that ship around.
There's plenty of times when you talk about teams not doing well, saying that I'm the manager, all I can do is set them up. It's up to them to deliver on the pitch. See set pieces, that is definitely something a manager can set them up for success for. That is something that he will have fingerprints on, him and his team. And look, it wasn't to be for Ballymena. They could have had 4 wins in a row in all competitions. They have recovered ever so slightly, and they'll hope that this doesn't completely kill their momentum. They'll have plenty of tougher games coming up, but Newry are thanking their lucky stars for Dungannon, and it looks as though now it might just be a fight between Ballymena and Newry. Of course, any of those teams above them could drop down, but look, 9 points between Ballymena and Carrick. That's ultimately, it sounds ridiculous. There is only 13 games left of this season. To a certain extent, they're running out of games, even at this stage of the season. So it might be a straight up battle between those two moving forward. Okay, looking ahead to the next couple of days of football, it's very likely by the time you're hearing this podcast that it is all over. But let's talk about potential permutations for the first big trophy of the season, the League Cup. We're G'ing up Dungannon. Do you fear them in the semi-final on Tuesday evening, where Linfield hosts Roddy McIlroy and the Swifts? Is David Healy practicing defending?
He's going to have to. After all those set-piece goals from Dungannon, it's clear to see that Roddy McIlroy's been very busy drumming that into them, as you've already said there, Peter. But it's a very tight call, to be quite honest. I think Dungannon gave us our biggest scare of the season, certainly at Windsor Park. They were 3-1 up after some very, very dodgy defending, and they were lucky. Not looking forward to it. Never, ever look forward to going down to Dungannon. It is always a very difficult game. We always seem to huff and puff round there. It's been a while since, well, it's been a few years since we've absolutely blown them away. And you know what? There's never been a game recently that, Linfield have been in control the whole game of. Dungannon have spells in the game where they look like, they can maybe test Chris John's challenge our defenders, and you never be quite sure. But despite Rodney sort of steadying the ship and technically just turning the ship into a speedboat at the minute for Dungannon, I think the Blues should have enough to edge it. I think 2-1 to the Blues, and anything is a win in the semi-final would be good for us.
Whoever gets through there will be meeting a side from Mid-Ulster. Despite them being 2 divisions apart, Portadown and Glenavon are facing off, and this time it's actually probably one of the bigger Mid-Ulster derbies in a long, long time. The chance of going to a final and a big final in the League Cup. Both teams will be believing that they can do it. They can pull it off. I think there's no doubt that, particularly in the recent run that they're going into this, Glenalvon are the absolute favourites, especially all these little extra additions. It's at Mournview. It looks set to be an all but a sellout there as well. You'll be able to view it at home if you haven't already, via it being streamed. I think Niffle are doing that, so that's pretty exciting. I know a lot of people haven't watched Portadown this year, so it's hard to really tell what they'll bring to it, but you look at the Port's results in the Cup this year, like they beat the Crews, they beat Loughgall twice, I think. They've been able to take out Premiership opposition when it's a knockout format. Just ask Carrick Rangers. You're probably more scared if you're a Glenavon fan, because Portadown probably have a lot less to lose.
Yeah, I mean, if Portadown get a hammering, one half of Mid-Ulster's begging for, and the other one's begging that it doesn't happen. It's no real skin off Niall Curry's nose, and that Portadown team. Technically they're playing a Premiership opposition. They're a division above them. If they get scalped, it's probably expected. Glenavon, as we have said, on this absolutely wonderful run of form, on paper should be winning it, but anything can happen in a semi-final. Anything can happen in a derby, and anything can happen, especially in the Mid-Ulster derby. Portadown have not won at Mournview Park since 2020. Bit of a long stint for them.
Fascinating game. I'll probably lean for both the favourites in probably the Blues and Glenavon, but that'll be quite fun that anybody that's not going to the game is able to watch that Mid-Ulster derby via the Niffle online pages. And yes, I know I keep like making up fake names for the Mid Ulster Derby. Some people actually get really annoyed about it. I think I'm going to continue just doing it as an absolute joke. I think I've done the Clash of Craigavon, the Craigavon, I know, confrontation. I just find it really funny how annoyed some fans get about it. It's all bants. Right, this weekend we've finally got there. Glenavon either jubilant after rubbing their Mid Ulster Derby rivals in it at home, have another game at home on Friday. Busy week for them. Where can we call them inform Glentoran come to town? I mean, for the past couple of years, this game has been throw your dominoes in the sky and see what falls. And I can't say this is any different.
This year has been Glentoran's year in this one. I mean, last year it was Glenavon's for sure. It's really just as you say, it's a toss of a coin as to whose year it is. The Glens, well, they didn't beat them at all up until the European playoff where they absolutely thumped them 5-0. And one of Conor McMenamin's last acts, of course. It really is a toss of a coin. But I think the form of Glentoran scoring 6 goals last week against, albeit a very poor Coleraine side, as we've already mentioned, should give them the confidence, I think, to pull through.
I'm gonna go 0-0 draw because I just think they'll both start out slow, seeing each other out, and then that will then proceed into taking it at half time, and then they're both trying to figure each other out, and then all of a sudden we're sitting there going, is that the 82nd minute? And then both teams are suddenly trying to get some sort of result, and I just, if this is a high score goal score game, I'll be very surprised. So maybe a goal either way, but I think this could be a bit more of a tighter affair. Can Cliftonville shake off that almost scare that they had against Newry when they host Ballymena, or was that the sign of one of the potential biggest upsets of the season? What says you, Mark McGuiggan?
That's probably a bit of a difficult game, away in Uri. That's a tough game. I think they should have no problems here against Ballymena. I really cannot see Ballymena getting anything out of this. Now they did beat Cliftonville 4-1 last year, last December, so that's 21. It still feels like 2023. So strange. But anyway, Reds are unbeaten at home since October, when the Blues went up there and beat them on a cold evening. I think the Reds should have enough in their arsenal. And sure, if anything goes wrong, there's a guy called Joe Gormley sitting on the bench. So 2-0 Reds for me.
Mark, I'm really not trying to be contrarian here, and I know I've made probably one of my worst takes on this podcast connected to Cliftonville, but I mean, if it's maybe this is a thumping, but I
Go
2-1 Ballymena. Why not? I,
go ahead.
I don't know why. I don't really believe it's going to happen. But can you not feel it? It's like Ballymena or the team that everybody throw away, but they're low key have had decent results recently. Cliftonville feel all good. Oh, thank goodness we didn't wreck it against Newry away from home. It just there's something of the Dungannon results last year about this. I don't really believe it, but I if that happens, I'm going to say well. So it's a non-prediction, but like I everybody be on shock watch for that, absolutely. And it would be probably the biggest shock of the season so far, bar maybe some of the local results, maybe against Larne. Right, Coleraine are not happy. Carrick Rangers are not happy. Can someone be happy come 5 o'clock? Maybe. After seeing Carrick Rangers, could this be finally the nice big warm hug homecoming for Jamie McGonigal? Maybe. Could be. Possibly.
There's a lot of maybes about this. Lots of
A
maybes.
lot of maybes.
Have we got a name for the derby? Like the new investment thing, sort of. Like, is that a thing or not yet? Are we just waiting
Oh,
for that?
I know what you mean. Like the
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 all the
I
all
don't know
American
the
rejects, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? I suppose Korean's London investment. Who knows where the money's coming from? But anyway,
yeah.
it's not
The
by the
Cash
many
Converters
wins.
Derby.
Cash converters derby, very good. So yeah, not 100% sure that Korean can actually pull this one off. I'm not sure if Korean can think they can pull it off either. But um, having McGonagall back might be all the difference. But I think their confidence is possibly the lowest that I've seen it in a very long time. Even they pulled it through the extra time against Cliftonville, and then one goal turned into three, sort of thing. They've conceded nine in their last two. I think Parkus is going to have a say in this one. Parkus hasn't put a big stamp on a game in a while,
He,
so
he,
I think
he will need to if there's going to be any points going to Carrick, I think.
I think Carrick might just edge this one now.
I'm gonna say 2-0 Coleraine. I think without Joe Crow, they're Carrick are struggling to find themselves. But away at Coleraine Showgrounds, why not play without fear? And perhaps Carrick are more dangerous without fear. But I think I'm gonna give Coleraine a little tiny bit of a bounce back there. 2-0. Swifts Larne. Swifts could be buzzing after Tuesday, but we talk about this whole thing of full time teams, etc., etc. They have the ability to train fitness. Dungannon have a hard fought game against Ballymena, then they go against Linfield. That'll be a really taxing game no matter what way it goes. I as much as they've been a bogey team for Larne, I think Larne will win out here 3-1.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Lauren have already been stung by that Dungannon wasp too many times this season for Tiernan Lynch's like, and I think that for all extensive purposes, Lauren, it's a must-win game for Lauren. You can't be coming out of your games with Dungannon Swifts before the split if you want to win the league and not have beaten them at all. It's almost points that you're nearly looking at. Oh, they're ticked off. I'm sure Lauren fans are going, sure, it's only Dungannon. I'm sure they said that twice this season. So I think they have to be very, very wary of what is a half decent Dungannon side, and I think they'll just they'll nearly force a win like they had to do up at Seaview last Friday night. I'm gonna go 2-1 Larne.
There's something about this that reminds me of that time Cliftonville came and just passed it round like it was a training game, and I can see Lauren doing something very similar, especially after some of the little set plays that they set up against the Crews on carpet. So I think Lauren will sneak it. Hello, Linfield. Have you met Crusaders? I think you have. I think you know each other very, very well. Again, Windsor Park hasn't been as a sturdy home as they would like to for Linfield. Crusaders are angry, but they're depleted. I mean, they've been able to hold Linfield off and get a couple of draws in recent times, but this is probably the weakest Crusaders side they've played against in a couple of years, so it's a bit like Larne. Despite better opposition that they're playing against, it's once again, don't blink, don't
Yeah.
lose.
I must say that when the Crews came up to Windsor last year, it was a bit of a poor game until it was all sort of sparked into life by about four passes that ended up in a Matthew Fitzpatrick goal. We had the ball on the halfway line and we just decided, right, suppose we'll score here. And just, had the ability, had a certain guy called Joel Cooper playing that day and just tossed it up, one, two, three, bang, into the back of the net. And I don't think the Crews have that anymore. I don't think the Crews have the ability, to just grab a game by the scruff and say, right, we need to go on and win this here. Um, Surprisingly, the last time that the Crews actually won at Windsor Park was in the Irish Cup. Um, a certain man called Marek Cervenka scored for Linfield that day, very, very late on, only for Billy Joe Burns to score an absolute perler. They haven't won at Windsor Park in the league since 2017 when a young man called Gavin White scored that day. So it's been a long, long time since fifth place Crusaders have managed to get a win up at Windsor Park. 21 points behind, and I think that's going to stretch to 24 with a 3-0 win for the Blues on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it'll be. Yeah, I think it'll be 2-1, 2-1 or so, and it'll go to Linfield. Final game of the weekend, and low key, a potential pivotal one for both teams. Legitimately, if Loughgall win that game at home against Newry, they could all but secure safety. Not mathematically, but you're going into that where they've already got 16 points between them and Newry. They make that 19 with 12 games to go after that. I mean, what have they got to worry about? And also, 30 points pretty much gets you safe anyway. And then you've got Ballymena, who, if the results don't go for Ballymena, and a lot of you will not think that will happen, that then increases their difference between them to. That's massive. So, as much as they can sit by, people will look at that as a game for Newry where they can get a win and start this going. I mean, Loughgall can calm the whole season down and get a real big step towards one of their main aims. And I think they will do that. I think this is 2-1 to Loughgall. I don't think this is a team that's ever taken their foot off the pedal so far this season. They're just enjoying themselves way too much. And every game's a party to them. And as much as this looks like a key layup for Newry to start things, I think Loughgall win 2-1.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, to be totally honest. After watching Loughgall on Saturday afternoon, they're able to deal with Linfield coming down and not get hammered by one of the best teams in the league as such. I think if I was still podcasting week in week out, you'd have been sick of me saying the fact that this is the game that these are games that Loughgall see as must win games. The big six coming down the road. If you steal a point, if you steal three, even better. But these games are the ones where they've been really, really solid. I think they've been real disciplined in games against the teams in and around them. And they actually have a 9-1 aggregate edge over Newry in the last 4 games that they've played. Now, that's across the last couple of years. So I cannot see anything but a Loughgall win here. Newry winless, of course, since the very early stages of October in the league. I mean, on paper, it looks like a Loughgall win to me as well. I'm going to go 1-0.
That's so tough for Newry, especially after that game against Cliftonville. But I mean, it's just too much of a great opportunity for Loughgall. Why leave it open when they can make it even more assured and maybe even dream of this European playoff place? So yes, as someone who is podcasting every week, yes, that is me talking about Loughgall every week, as everyone knows. But Mark, I mean, I don't know what this will come down to, but we just haven't shut up. An absolute mammoth podcast this week, and I thought every word was well worth it. I know plenty of people miss your weekly musings, but I know you're still well active online. Where can people find your stuff?
Yeah, just find me little ramblings on Twitter, Mark McGuiggan. So if you wanna have a chat about Irish League anytime at all.
Let's meet just outside by the by the bin sheds, 3:00. Mark, a pleasure. I hope you're keeping very, very well. And here, if there's more success for your boys in blue, we'll be sick of the sight of each other between now and the end of the season, I think.
Yeah, hopefully so.
Been a pleasure, mate. Chat soon.
Thank you so much. All the best, folks.
I don't think there's very much for me to add after such a big episode, so I will keep this short, because if you've got all the way to the end, you're obviously a keen old bunny, which means if you aren't following me on social media pages, why not? Get you up-to-date information, get you connected with all the stuff that's going on here at the pod. The way to do that is via Instagram, Facebook, and or Twitter. It's Kicking Match on all of them. If you aren't locked in as a little subscriber, follower to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, great time to do it while I'm nattering away and you've still got your device or something in front of you. Just go to our page, hit the little thing, hit follow, hit subscribe, and you get a notification every time I kick one of these out to you. Thank you very much for listening the whole time. Wrap up warm. I'll see you next week, as I always will. Cheers.